No one knew she was still alive. That was exactly how Sade Balogun wanted it. For 10 years, she erased herself from the world that once knew her name. No calls, no traces, no past, especially not him. She had learned how to exist without being remembered. Quiet streets, small spaces, controlled routines, a life reduced to what she could manage. And nothing more. She dressed simply, not for beauty but for comfort. Every movement calculated, every step deliberate, not because she was weak, but because her body no longer allowed mistakes. To everyone around her, she was just another woman trying to get by. Invisible, forgotten, but far away in a world built on power and control. Someone had never stopped looking. A man who did not lose what belonged to him. A man who did not forget. For 10 years he searched. Not loudly, not desperately, but with the kind of patience that destroys distance. And when he finally found her, it wasn't in strength. It wasn't in defiance. It was in silence. In a wheelchair she never wanted him to see. In eyes that refused to recognize him. For the first time in his life, Choi Kang-Seok stood still. Because the woman he spent 10 years searching for was trying to disappear again, right in front of him. And this time, he wasn't going to let her. Sade Balogun had not always lived like this. There was a time when her presence filled a room before she even spoke. When her laughter came easily, unguarded, and her steps carried confidence instead of caution. She moved through life with quiet strength, the kind that didn't demand attention but never went unnoticed. That was the version of her he knew. The woman who stood beside Choi Kang-Seok without fear. Back then, his world was already dangerous. Power followed him everywhere. Silent, heavy, absolute. People lowered their voices when he entered a room. Decisions changed without explanation. And yet, around Sade there had been something different. He listened. Not because he had to. 'Cause he chose to. She was the only person who spoke to him without hesitation. The only one who didn't see the empire first, but the man behind it. And somehow, without trying, she became the one thing in his life that felt steady. That was why she had to leave. Didn't happen all at once. Danger never announced itself loudly in Kang-Seok's world. Crept in quietly. A look that lingered too long. A car that followed once. Then twice. Conversations that stopped when she entered the room. Sade noticed. She always did. At first she told herself it was nothing. That she was imagining it. That being close to a man like him came with shadows she simply had to ignore. Until the night those shadows reached her. It was fast. Too fast. Moment. Mistake. A consequence she never saw coming. Pain that didn't fade. Voices shouting. Darkness closing in before she could understand what was happening. When she woke up, the world felt different. Quieter. Heavier. And for the first time, Sade realized something she had never allowed herself to think before. Loving Choi Kang-Seok was no longer just dangerous for her. It made her a target. The decision came slowly. And then all at once. She didn't confront him. Didn't explain. Didn't give him the chance to stop her. Because she knew he would. Instead, she disappeared the only way she knew how, completely. She left before dawn, taking only what she could carry without drawing attention. No messages, no calls, no trace that could lead him back to her. It was the only way to protect him. And the only way to survive. 4 days, then weeks, she expected him to find her. She knew how powerful he was. How far his reach extended. How nothing stayed hidden from him for long. But time passed. And for the first time since she met him, Sade Balogun became someone no one could find. Not even the man who once knew her better than anyone else. What she didn't know, what she refused to believe, was that disappearance had never meant the same thing to Kang-Seok. Because while she was learning how to live without him, he was learning how to live with one purpose. Finding her. No matter how long it took. Loving Choi Kang-Seok had never been simple. It was never soft, never easy. Never the kind of love that existed without consequence. But it was real. Sade understood that from the very beginning. He did not offer promises the way other men did. There were no empty reassurances, no careless words meant to comfort. Everything about him was measured, controlled, deliberate. Even his affection. He didn't say, "I love you" often. But he showed it in ways that couldn't be ignored. The way his attention shifted the moment she entered a room. The way conversations ended when she spoke, because he listened. The way the world around him adjusted, subtly, to make space for her. With Kang-Seok, love was not spoken loudly. It was enforced by presence, protected by power. And that was where the danger lived. At first, Sade thought she could exist within his world without becoming part of it. That she could stand beside him and remain untouched by the violence that followed his name. But Kang-Seok's world didn't work that way. Nothing connected to him was ever neutral. People watched. Always. Not openly. Not carelessly. But with intent. She began to notice the patterns. The way certain faces appeared too often in the same places. The way silence followed her movements outside of his presence. The way respect toward her felt calculated. She wasn't just Sade anymore. She was someone important to him. And that made her valuable. It made her vulnerable. Kang-Seok knew it too. That was the unspoken tension between them. He never told her to stay away. Never asked her to leave. But there were moments, small, controlled moments, when his guard slipped just enough for her to see it. The way his eyes hardened when she stepped outside alone. The way his voice lowered when he told his men to watch closely. The way his hand lingered just a second longer, as if grounding himself in her presence. He was careful, but not enough. Because love, in his world, was a weakness others were always waiting to exploit. And Sade could feel it tightening around her. Still she stayed. Not because she didn't understand the risk, but because, with him, she felt something she had never felt before. Not as someone fragile. Not as someone to protect. But as someone who could stand beside him without breaking. He didn't treat her like something delicate. He treated her like something rare. And that mattered. Until it didn't. Because love like theirs didn't collapse all at once. Fractures slowly. Under pressure. Under watchful eyes. Under the quiet understanding that one day, something would go wrong. Sade felt it before it happened. A shift. That invisible line being crossed. The air around him grew heavier. His movements more controlled. The world he kept carefully balanced. Starting to tilt. And for the first time since she met him, Sade Balogun was afraid. Not of him. But of what loving him would eventually cost. And deep down, she already knew. When that moment came, she would be the one who had to pay. The night it happened, nothing felt unusual at first. That was the danger of Kang-Seok's world. It didn't always announce when it was about to break you. Sade remembered the quiet most. Not silence, just the absence of warning. She had been leaving one of his private properties, a place she had been to before, a place that had always felt controlled. Safe in the way nothing truly dangerous ever looks like it is. His men were nearby. Not close enough to crowd her, but close enough to intervene if needed. That was the arrangement. It had always been enough. Until it wasn't. She noticed the car too late. Not because it was obvious, but because it wasn't. No sudden movement. No reckless speed. Just a presence that didn't belong, slipping too smoothly into a space it hadn't earned. By the time instinct caught up to reality, the moment had already shifted. Voices sharp, unfamiliar. Movement, too fast to follow. One of Kang-Seok's men stepping forward, hand already reaching. And then everything collapsed at once. The sound came first. Not loud. Not explosive. Just wrong. Sade didn't fully understand what was happening. Her body reacted before her mind could. She turned. Too quickly, too instinctively, and stepped into something she couldn't see. Pain followed immediately. Not sharp. Heavy. Like the ground itself had turned against her. She fell, but not the way people fall in accidents. Not clumsy. Not gradual. It was sudden. Final. The world tilted, then disappeared beneath her. Voices blurred together. Someone shouting her name. Another voice giving orders. Cold, precise, controlled. Even in chaos she recognized him. He tried to move. Her body didn't respond. That was the first moment she knew something was wrong. Not fear. Not panic. Something deeper. Her breath came uneven, her fingers gripping at nothing, searching for balance that no longer existed. The strength she had always relied on gone without explanation. And through it all, one thought pressed through the confusion. This wasn't supposed to reach her. This world. His world was never supposed to touch her like this. Kang-Seok was beside her in seconds. She didn't see him arrive. She felt him. The shift in the air. The stillness that followed him. The way everything else seemed to fall back, as if even chaos respected his presence. Sade. Her name low and steady, but something underneath it had broken. He tried to answer. Nothing came out. His hand was on her, firm but careful, as if he was holding something that could shatter if he wasn't precise enough. For the first time since she had known him, Choi Kang-Seok was not in control. She saw it in his eyes. Not fear. Something worse. Helplessness. Passed quickly. Hidden, buried under the discipline that defined him. Orders were given. Movements were executed. The situation contained the way it always was. But it was too late. Because something irreversible had already happened. The world didn't fade to black. It dimmed slowly. Like something being taken away piece by piece. The last thing Sade felt before everything disappeared was his hand tightening around hers. And the unspoken realization neither of them could stop. This was the moment everything changed. Not just for her, but for both of them. When Sade woke up, the world felt unfamiliar. Not because the room had changed, but because she had. The ceiling above her was white. Unmoving. Machines hummed softly somewhere out of sight, steady and indifferent. The air carried that sterile quiet that made everything feel distant, controlled. For a moment she didn't move. Not out of fear. Out of instinct. As if her body already knew something her mind hadn't accepted yet. Then she tried. Small movement. Just enough to confirm she was still herself. Nothing happened. The stillness that followed was louder than any sound. Her breath caught, shallow, uneven. She tried again, this time with more intention, more force. Still nothing. And in that silence, the truth settled in. Low. Heavy. Unavoidable. Something had been taken from her. She didn't cry. Not immediately. Sade had never been someone who broke easily. Even now, even here, her mind searched for control. For understanding. For something she could hold on to that still made sense. But there was nothing. Only the absence of what used to be. The door opened quietly. She didn't have to look to know who it was. Kang-Seok didn't rush toward her. He never did. His movements were as controlled as ever, measured, precise. But something beneath it had shifted. She felt it. The weight in the room changed when he entered. Sade. Her name steady as always. But softer. Careful. She turned her head just enough to see him. For the first time since she had known him, he looked restrained. Not by power. By something he couldn't control. He stood beside her, close but not touching, as if unsure of where to place his hands without causing more damage. That was when it became real. Not the injury. Not the pain. But what it had done to him. "I'm fine," she said. The words came out automatically. Habit. Shield. The same words she had always used. He didn't respond. Didn't argue. Didn't correct her. And somehow that silence said more than anything else. Because Kang-Seok was not a man who accepted things he knew were untrue. But this time, he let it stand. Days passed. Or maybe weeks. Time lost its shape in that room. Doctors came and went. Voices explained things she already understood without hearing. Words like recovery, adjustment, limitations. Spoken carefully. As if softness could change their meaning. Kang-Seok was always there. Not constantly visible, but present. Decisions were made before they reached her. Arrangements handled without discussion. The world outside that room moved according to his will. Just as it always had. Except now. She was at the center of it. And Sade began to see something she had never seen before. Not his power, but what her condition turned her into within that power. A responsibility. A vulnerability. A weakness. People looked at her differently. Carefully. Measured. Not because of who she was, but because of what she now represented. Something fragile. Something that could be used. Something that could break him. That was when she understood. Staying meant becoming the one thing Kang-Seok could not afford. Not because he didn't love her, but because he did. And in his world, love was always the first target. The decision didn't come with emotion. No dramatic moment. No final argument. Just clarity. Cold. Precise. Certain. She waited until the moment was right. Until his attention was pulled elsewhere. Until the system around her. His system. Relaxed just enough to create a gap. And then, she left. No message. No explanation. Because anything she left behind could be traced. And if he found her, he wouldn't let her go again. Sade Balogun didn't disappear because she stopped loving him. She disappeared because she understood something he never would. That sometimes, the only way to protect someone you love is to remove yourself completely. At first, no one realized she was gone. Not because she wasn't important, but because Kang-Seok's world was built on control, and control did not expect disappearance. Her room was still intact, her things untouched. The system around her continued to function exactly as it was designed to, until it didn't. It was a small detail that broke the pattern, a report that didn't align, a guard who hesitated before answering. A space that felt empty in a way it wasn't supposed to. Kang-Seok noticed immediately. He always did. Sade. Her name was spoken once. No response. That was enough. Everything shifted. Not loudly. Not chaotically. Silently. Doors closed that rarely did. Movements slowed. Conversations lowered. The entire structure around him adjusted without needing instruction. Because everyone understood one thing. Something had gone wrong. Kang-Seok didn't react the way others expected. No anger. No raised voice. No visible urgency. He stood still. And in that stillness, decisions were made. Find her. 2 words. Controlled. Absolute. The search began immediately. Not publicly. Not carelessly. There were no announcements. No visible panic. No signs that anything had changed. But beneath the surface, everything moved. Names were pulled. Records checked. Every connection traced back to its origin. People who had seen her last were questioned. Not aggressively, but precisely. No detail was dismissed. No possibility ignored. Days passed. Then weeks. No trace. That was when others began to understand the difference between losing someone and Kang-Seok losing someone. Because he did not stop. He did not assume. He did not accept absence as an outcome. He adjusted, expanded, adapted. The search spread beyond his immediate reach. Quiet contacts activated. Old alliances revisited. Information flowed through channels that existed long before Sade ever entered his life. Nothing. Time moved forward. Months turned into years. And yet one thing remained unchanged. He never called off the search. To everyone else, Sade Balogun became a memory. A name that faded with time. A situation that no longer required attention. But not to him. Her file was never closed. Her name was never removed. Her absence was never accepted. Kang-Seok didn't speak about her. Not because he had forgotten, but because he hadn't. He carried it differently, quietly, in the decisions he made, in the places he returned to, in the silence that followed certain moments. He remembered everything. The way she moved, The way she spoke without hesitation. The way she looked at him. Not with fear, not with expectation, but with something steady. Something real. And that memory did not weaken over time. Sharpened. Because the longer she remained missing, the more certain he became. She hadn't disappeared by accident. She had chosen it. That realization didn't stop him. Changed him. The search became more precise. More patient. More relentless. He stopped looking for where she might be. And started understanding where she would choose to go. Smaller places. Quieter spaces. Lives that didn't invite attention. He followed patterns, not people. Choices, not traces. Years passed. And still. He searched. Not with desperation. With certainty. Because Choi Kang-Seok did not chase things he could not reach. He waited. He watched. He learned. And when the moment finally came, it wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was the result of 10 years of not letting go. Because some people disappear to be forgotten. But Sade Balogun had made one mistake. She disappeared from the world. Not from him. It didn't happen the way she imagined it would. There was no warning. No sign. No moment to prepare. Sade was simply moving through her day the way she always did. Slow, measured, deliberate. The small shop was quiet, the kind of place people passed through without looking twice. That was why she chose it. No attention. No risk. No past. She kept her head lowered, hands steady as she arranged what little she could manage. Routine had become her shield. Predictable. Controlled. Until the air changed. It was subtle. So subtle that anyone else would have missed it. But Sade felt it immediately. A shift. That quiet weight pressing into the space without making a sound. Her hands stilled. For a second she told herself it was nothing. Just another passing moment. Just another stranger walking in. But her body didn't believe it. Slowly, carefully she looked up. And everything stopped. He hadn't changed. Not in the ways that mattered. Choi Kang-Seok stood near the entrance, still, composed. His presence bending the room without effort. The same controlled posture. The same unreadable expression. But his eyes were no longer searching. They had found her. For 10 years she had imagined this moment. Feared it. Prepared for it. And yet, nothing she imagined came close to this. Because he wasn't looking at her the way she expected. Not with anger. Not with questions. Not even with relief. He was looking at her like something he had already decided on. Something he had already claimed. Sade. Her name left his lips quietly. Like it had never been gone. Her breath caught. Instinct moved faster than thought. "I think you have the wrong person," she said. The lie came easily. Too easily. A reflex built over years of survival. For a moment, neither of them moved. The space between them stretched, heavy with everything unspoken. Kang-Seok didn't step closer. Didn't argue. Didn't expose her lie. He simply watched. And that was worse. Because his silence meant one thing. He wasn't uncertain. He didn't need proof. He already knew. Sade forced herself to move again, turning slightly, reaching for something. Anything that could break the moment. Distance. She needed distance. But before she could complete the motion, his voice stopped her. "You're slower." The words were quiet. Measured. But they landed with precision. Not an observation. Confirmation. Her grip tightened. Just for a second. Enough. Kang-Seok noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. He took a step forward then. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Certain. And with that single movement, the space she had built over 10 years collapsed. "I looked for you," he said. No accusation. No emotion. Just truth. Sade didn't turn back. Couldn't. Because if she did, everything she had held together would break. "You shouldn't have," she replied. Her voice steady in a way that didn't match what she felt. Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. "You left." 3 words. Simple. Controlled. But beneath them, 10 years of unanswered questions. Sade closed her eyes briefly. This was the moment she had spent years avoiding. The moment she knew would come if she ever stood in front of him again. And still, she wasn't ready. "You need to go," she said. It wasn't a request. It was the last boundary she had left. Kang-Seok didn't move, didn't argue, didn't raise his voice. But something in his expression shifted. Not anger, not frustration, decision. "I'm not leaving," he said. Final. As if the outcome had already been decided long before this moment. Sade's chest tightened. Because she knew that tone. She remembered it. And it meant one thing. He wasn't here to ask. He was here to stay. And for the first time in 10 years, Sade Balogun realized something she had tried to forget. You could run from the world. You could hide from the past. But you could not disappear from a man who had never stopped looking. Not when he was finally standing right in front of you. Sade didn't look at him again. Not because she didn't want to. But because she couldn't afford to. Everything about his presence pulled at memories she had buried too carefully. The way he stood. The silence he carried. The certainty in him that had never needed to be proven. If she faced him fully, even for a moment, she might forget why she left. "You need to go," she repeated, quieter this time, as if lowering her voice could make the words stronger. Kang-Seok didn't respond immediately. He moved instead. Not closer in a way that threatened her, but closer in a way that made ignoring him impossible. Each step measured, controlled, like he was giving her time to react. And knowing she wouldn't. "I found you," he said. Not pride, not relief, just fact. Sade exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening against the edge of the counter. "And now you have," she replied. "So you can leave." No. The word landed without force, yet it carried more weight than anything louder could. Sade closed her eyes briefly. This was exactly what she had feared. Not anger, not confrontation, but his refusal to let things end the way she wanted. "You don't understand," she said, turning slightly but still not fully facing him. "This isn't your world anymore." "It never stopped being mine," he replied. That wasn't what she meant. And he knew it. Her control slipped just slightly. "I'm not part of it," she said. "I'm not part of your life anymore." Silence followed. "You never stopped being part of it." Her breath faltered. Just for a second. Enough. Kang-Seok stepped closer again. And this time, the distance between them became impossible to maintain. Not physical distance, there was still space, but something else. Something heavier. "You left," he continued, his voice low, steady. "You didn't end it." Sade turned then. She had to. Because the way he said it, like it was unfinished, like it still existed, was more dangerous than anything else. "That's the same thing," she said. But even to her, it didn't sound convincing. His gaze held hers, unyielding. "No," he said. "It isn't." The air tightened. Every word between them carried more than what was spoken. "You don't get to decide that," Sade added, her voice firmer now, pushing back against the pull she could feel building. "I already did," he replied. There it was. The part of him she had always known. The man who didn't wait for permission. The man who acted. Her chest rose unevenly. "You can't just come back after 10 years and..." "I never left." The interruption was quiet, but final. And it hit harder than anything else. 'Cause it was true. He hadn't moved on. He hadn't replaced her. He hadn't let her go. Sade looked away first. She had to. Because standing in front of him like this, hearing that, feeling the weight of 10 years pressing back into the present, it was breaking something she had worked too hard to hold together. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I was always going to," he answered. Another step. Closer now. Not enough to touch. But enough that she could feel the shift in the space between them. "I'm not leaving you like this." Her heart tightened. Not because of what he said, but because of what he saw. "You don't get to decide what I am," she said, her voice lower now, edged with something sharper. "Or what I need." Kang-Seok's gaze didn't waver. I don't, he said. But I decide what I won't ignore. The words settled between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. Sade swallowed, her control slipping in ways she couldn't stop. Because that was the problem. It had never been about whether he understood. It was that he saw too much. And once Choi Kang-Seok saw something, he didn't walk away from it. No matter how hard she tried to push him out. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, thick with everything Sade had spent 10 years trying to bury. She could feel it pressing in now, rising to the surface whether she wanted it to or not. Kang-Seok didn't rush her. He didn't push. That was what made it worse. 'Cause he was waiting. And he would keep waiting. Sade let out a slow breath, her grip tightening against the counter before she finally let go. There was no point holding the line anymore. Not when he was already standing on the other side of it. You want to know why I left? She said quietly. His answer came without hesitation. Yes. No anger. No accusation. Just certainty. She nodded once, more to herself than to him. It wasn't because I stopped loving you. The words felt heavier than she expected. Kang-Seok didn't react. But something in his gaze sharpened. Sade looked down briefly, gathering what little control she had left before continuing. That night, she said, her voice steady but softer now, wasn't random. It was because of you. The words hung in the air. Not blame. Not bitterness. Just truth. They weren't looking for me, she continued. I was just the easiest way to reach you. Kang-Seok's expression didn't change. But the stillness around him deepened. Sade forced herself to go on. I saw it before it happened, she said. The way people started watching. The way things shifted. I knew what it meant. Her eyes lifted, meeting his fully this time. And I stayed anyway. That was the part that mattered. That was the mistake. Her voice tightened slightly. I told myself I could handle it. That I understood your world enough to survive in it. A small, humorless breath escaped her. I was wrong. Silence followed. Not empty. Heavy. Because there was nothing to argue with. When I woke up, she continued, quieter now, it wasn't just about what I lost. Her hand moved slightly, almost unconsciously, brushing against the side of her wheelchair. It was what I became. She didn't look away. Not this time. I wasn't just someone you loved anymore, she said. I was something your enemies could use. The words landed clean. Precise. Unavoidable. And you knew it, she added. A flicker in his eyes. Controlled. But real. Sade nodded faintly. That's why you stayed closer. Why everything around me changed. More guards. More control. Less freedom. You were protecting me, she said. But you were also proving my point. Kang-Seok didn't interrupt. Didn't deny it. Because he couldn't. And I couldn't live like that, she finished. Not as your weakness. Not as the reason someone gets to you. Her voice softened at the end. Not weaker. Just honest. So I left. The simplicity of it made it heavier. I didn't tell you, she added. Because you wouldn't have let me go. That, more than anything, was the truth. Sade exhaled slowly. The weight of everything she had carried finally spoken out loud. For 10 years I thought I did the right thing, she said. I'm still not sure I was wrong. Silence settled again. But this time it was different. Not avoidance. Not distance. Just the space between two people who finally understood the same truth. From different sides. And for the first time since he found her, Sade wasn't hiding anymore. Kang-Seok didn't respond immediately. He stood there, absorbing every word she had said. Not resisting it, not dismissing it, but holding it with the same precision he applied to everything else in his life. Sade watched him carefully, waiting. For anger. For denial. For something that would make this easier. But it didn't come. Instead, I know. The words were quiet, steady, and they stopped her more than anything else could have. Her brows tightened slightly. You know. Kang-Seok nodded once. I knew that night was when I saw you on the ground. I knew it was because of me. There was no hesitation in his voice. No attempt to shift the weight of it. He carried it fully. Sade's chest tightened. You should have told me, she said. I would have stopped you, he replied. Honest, uncomplicated. And exactly why she hadn't. Silence settled again, but it no longer felt like distance. Felt like something else. Something steadier. I wasn't protecting you the way you needed, he continued. I was controlling what I could. That was the closest he would come to admitting fault. And it was enough. Sade looked at him, really looked this time. Not as the man she had run from, but as the one standing in front of her now. Changed. Not softer, but aware. And now? She asked quietly. Kang-Seok's gaze didn't waver. Now I know the difference. The air shifted. Subtle, but real. Sade let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For 10 years, everything between them had been defined by what they couldn't say. What they didn't understand. But now, there was nothing left hidden. I didn't want you to see me like this, she admitted. Her voice was softer now. Not guarded. Just honest. Kang-Seok stepped closer. Carefully. Not closing the space completely. Just enough to show intention without taking it from her. I see you, he said. Simple. But different this time. Not power. Not control. Recognition. Sade's fingers tightened slightly against her lap. And what does that change? Everything, he answered. Was. But not the way it used to. That mattered. More than anything else. Because this time, he wasn't trying to pull her back into the past. He was meeting her where she was. I'm not leaving, he added, his voice calm but firm. But I'm not forcing you either. Sade searched his expression. Looking for the part of him that would take control. That would decide for both of them. But it wasn't there. Not anymore. And if I say no, she asked. Kang-Seok held her gaze. Then I stay. Until you don't mean it anymore. A small, almost imperceptible shift in her expression. Not resistance. Not acceptance. Something in between. For the first time, the space between them didn't feel like something to escape. Felt like something to understand. Sade looked away briefly, then back at him. Not running. Not hiding. Just there. I don't need protection, she said. I know, he replied. But you won't face everything alone. This time the words didn't feel like control. They felt like choice. Sade exhaled slowly. The tension in her chest easing in a way she hadn't allowed in years. Nothing was fixed. Nothing was certain. But something had changed. Not the past. Not what they had lost. But what they could still build. And for the first time since she left, Sade Balogun didn't feel like she had to disappear to be safe. She just had to decide whether she was ready to stay.